Welcome to Syntax. Today we've got myself, CJ, and Scott on the horn. We're talking about Vite's second announcement. We had an earlier episode. We talked about Vite Plus, their open source tool. Another thing that they recently announced is this thing called Void, which is both a deployment platform as well as a Vite plugin that will handle all of your bindings and whatnot. Basically, I said this and a lot of people got mad, but as I said that this was like a Laravel or Rails for JavaScript, which is about 87% true, obviously, but it got a lot of people mad. Is this, CJ, is this a Rails for JavaScript?
It's like 60% true, because like one of the things that Rails or Laravel gives us is a full ORM and like more opinions about where stuff should go. This basically gives you access to all the stuff that Cloudflare makes available, like a database and a queue and all of these other things that you typically need in an app, and then exposes them to be really easy to use. But I guess we'll talk about it. It does.
They are giving you an ORM though, and they are giving you opinions as to where things should go.
But in Rails West, it's like you're basically defining like the schema, and it's giving you a lot more.
Yeah, much more structured. I get that.
Yeah.
The Adonis JS people had my neck for that. I should not have said that. But
we'll talk about it once we get into the database layer, because I have ideas about this stuff, and I think
Me too.
my ideas are more Rails and Laravel-esque than what Void has done. Not to say that this stuff isn't cool, but...
Yes. So what the heck is this? So the folks behind Vite, it's a company called Void Zero, have come out with a full stack JavaScript framework called Void. It exposes itself via a Vite plugin, and it is heavily tied or bound to the Cloudflare environment. And it gives you a whole bunch of stuff, like kind of just set up right away, right? It gives you server actions and whatnot, and it gives you a database, a key value, authentication, Better Auth, like kind of all the stuff that you would want if you're building out an application. And we're going to go through it and talk about all the different pieces and whether or not this is Cloudflare lock-in and whether or not this is something that you should be excited for or not.
Sick. Yeah, I'm excited to dive into it. It's actually very funny because CJ and I had been both working on our own frameworks, and the amount of things that this landed on that are very similar to mine is both simultaneously disappointing but also very exciting because now what I can do instead of releasing mine is that I can take this and build on top of it, or at least possibly, because we'll get into some of the reasons why I might not want to do that. But it is very validating to me personally just how many of the choices they landed on that are very similar to what I landed on.
Definitely. And I would say they took a lot of inspiration from Svelte. We'll get into it, but like this idea of like a separate server file, like loaders, actions. And one of the things off the bat is like, I also consider this one of the great unifiers, right? Like you can use React, Vue, Svelte, or Solid, but the backend layer is the same for everything. I think this is one of the things that's missing in the JS ecosystem is pick a framework and you have a separate meta framework that you have to plug into. But this is one meta framework where you can choose the view layer, like similar to Astro, but this is more like instead of for content sites, this is more like full stack apps, dashboards, those kinds of things. Yeah,
it was really cool. So being able to use React, Vue, Svelte, or Solid is really cool. I don't know that you can mix and match them. I don't know that you would want to, although I know plenty of companies who have lots of mix and match apps out there. But I guess the templating layer can be whatever you want, which is really neat. You can also, so like this is a framework, meaning that it will do server-side rendering, it does caching, actions, forms, validation, tip to tail, does absolutely everything for you, but it apparently will also work with SvelteKit, 10-stack start, Nuxt, all of those things that you may be using. I think there's probably some caveats as to how much of the stuff works if you bring your own framework, but that's sort of the idea here.
Yeah, the way I think about it is like Void is a framework, but it's also a deployment platform. And if you don't want to use the framework, but you want to use the deployment platform, that plugin will allow you to plug it into SvelteKit or Handstack Start.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, where have we heard of this type of deployment platform before?
Vercel.
Yes, this is there. I think they're essentially trying to make the Vercel for Cloudflare here, which is like as much as people say, I don't like Vercel or whatever. It's very obvious to a company making money that they're by far the best DX for this type of thing, and they are doing extremely well, right? Like lots and lots of people host on Vercel, and it is a fantastic hosting platform. The reasons why people don't like it is because it's expensive, right? But you can't argue against it being a fantastic platform, and they're probably looking at this being like, yeah, we should make that for Cloudflare.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah. You know what I do? It is funny because Vercel has like resisted the Vite train for so long, even though even at the detriment of their own projects. They've also resisted anything that's not, I mean, it's not like they've resisted SvelteKit because they fund the development of SvelteKit, but like the Next platform and the SvelteKit platform and all these things are so separate. And then some of them use Vite, and Next is like really like, we are going to own this whole thing without using anyone else's tools, again, like to the detriment of the project.
Yeah.
And so it feels different for me, and I'll tell you why it feels different. It feels different only because this is the stuff I already pick anyways. It's like, what if we made a service that like just works with all the stuff you're already using? And I'm like, oh yeah, that's great. And they're like, oh, but that's kind of like against the things you don't like, which is like the Vercel Next.js style approach. But it's like, well, it's the stuff I like, so therefore it's fine, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know how to. I don't know how to
until
mix
you don't
that in my
like
brain.
part of it.
Yeah, so right. Yeah.
I've waffled on this because so for the framework that I'm building, I want to support self-hosting. I want to support any deployment platform.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm thinking about it even like higher level abstraction of like give you a DB, but you could use Cloudflare D1 or you could use Supabase Postgres or something like that. Whereas this is, if you want a DB, you're using Cloudflare D1. Or if you want...
It also uses, like, let's talk about that. So it has an ORM baked in, which is Drizzle. And then if you want a database, you either have to use SQLite via D1, or it also supports Postgres via Hyperdrive, which Hyperdrive is... Scott, you use Hyperdrive. Can you explain what that is real quick?
Oh, no, I use it and I cannot explain it. My understanding is it's like... My understanding is that it's like it allows for connection pooling of databases. It's like a layer that sits in between your actual database and your app for serverless applications, because if you don't, then there's something with the connection. All I know is that I have to use it, and it's a necessary evil, something that I do not like using. Yeah.
Like Cloudflare doesn't have sockets. And if you want to connect to a database, you are generally using like sockets, right? And so Cloudflare has this product called Hyperdrive, which will also, part of the reason that they have it is like if your database, it's not living anywhere close to where your code is running, that can introduce a lot of latency. So part of what their pitch for that is that like they've got a fat orange pipe from like where your database lives, like in like where do we host our MySQL database?
PlanetScale.
PlanetScale, you know, if you want to connect to like PlanetScale straight to, they've got a fat pipe from PlanetScale's office to the Cloudflare office, pipe in the database between the two.
Fat pipe. Yeah, I wonder, one thing I think about this is the local data story, because it is so tight. Everything is so tightly integrated. It's like, but what about my local data? Do I now have to like step outside this? What tools do I like to use that would work well with this? It doesn't seem like Zero Sync would work super well with this because it takes over so much. But yeah, I would want to think about that quite a bit, because I need my local data story.
Yeah, there's lots in the like Cloudflare ecosystem that just doesn't run on Cloudflare, right? Like Sharp is one, right? It's like it needs C++ bindings, and they either have a like alternative to running that in Cloudflare, or they recently just rolled out containers, which is basically just like, fine, you want to run a Docker image on Cloudflare? Like if that's the last thing that's stopping you, then you can do that.
Yeah. And if you want to see all of the errors in your application, you'll want to check out Sentry at sentry.io/syntax. You don't want a production application out there that, well, you have no visibility into in case something is blowing up and you might not even know it. So head on over to sentry.io/syntax. Again, we've been using this tool for a long time and it totally rules. All right.
Let's talk about type safety. So obviously one of the big things in a meta framework is end-to-end type safety, meaning that all the way from your ORM database schema, you get types all the way through your route handlers, your API requests, your page loaders, your actions from the server into the client. And that is beautiful. I think like the first time that I had that was probably 3 or 4 years ago with SvelteKit when we were building the syntax site. And I was like, this is absolutely beautiful. You know, you define your schema in the database. You say, oh, this is a page loader that loads these data pieces from the database, and we pick and choose, and we map and filter, and then we return that data. And then you go into the client side and you start to template that out, and those types just flow all the way through, and it's absolutely beautiful. So this, of course, has that. I think most frameworks have this type of thing these days.
Yeah, but and this has a couple of extra things too. So like you and the way they set this up is similar to SvelteKit. You have a separate .server file. That's where you define your loaders, and then in your template file .view.svelte.tsx or whatever, you get access to those typed loaders. But they also have an API layer that's fully typed. So this is one of the things that they borrowed from Nuxt. On the client side, if you do fetch, you actually get type completion as to your API endpoints. And it does the smart thing of if that code is running during a server-side render, instead of a network hop, it just calls that function directly. I think there's a screenshot with the
fetch request.
API fetch.
Yeah, right here.
Like
so this is just a regular ass fetch request to an API endpoint, but the response from that fetch is fully typed, right?
Cool.
Yep.
Yeah.
And like in your editor, like you would get autocomplete for /API/AI. It knows about what all your routes are, and like I said, no network hop. Like it looks like maybe your server would be requesting itself, but it's smart enough to know where the code is running and actually just call the function directly. This is one of the things that really bugs me about Next.js. Like there's no built-in way to do this.
What about RPC here? It is funny because we just mentioned loaders and form loaders, page actions and stuff, and I gotta say I'm so far over those. I like doing that at a route level sucks to me. I'm past that, and I'm doing everything with the Svelte remote functions and async Svelte, and being able to just call functions and do the form actions in a way that's not at a route level, because my stuff doesn't like think at a route level. It thinks at a component level.
They support both, right? So what we just showed was like, let's say you have a separate API definition and you want to call it from a component or a page, that works. And then they also have define a loader and an action and then call it directly from the component, at least from what I saw.
Yeah. Yeah, you'd be able to just like, very similar to how React Server Components works, or like page actions, server actions, and Tansac start, where you would just simply import that server action from your .server.ts file, and then it will just replace that with like a network call behind the scene, right? Like if we take a look at the kitchen sink example that they have here, and I've just defaced it with some syntax listeners here, but if we were to like add something to it, I'm pretty sure when they've coded this, I don't know if it's using a fetch request or like an RPC call, but it doesn't really matter, because you just hit it and it will send a network request to the back end and then come back. And on top of that, it's also using the whole like idea is very much like inertia.js inspired, which is like very much server centric. Your server will compute, your state lives on the server, the props come from the server and simply just will populate it. That's very popular in like non-JavaScript land, right? Like Laravel is huge, Inertia.js is really big, in Rails land, this idea is really popular as well.
Yeah, and Scott, can we dig in a bit more to what you were talking about for like pages? You don't like the request being tied to pages. Like, are you leaning more towards like, I'm going to define my API layer separate and then just call it from whatever pages need it? Is that more of what you're talking about versus trying to define them side by side?
The way I tend to work here is I'm defining my API as basically functions. If I need endpoints, then I have separate endpoints that then just call those functions. But in the SvelteKit way of doing things, you're creating just a query or a command or whatever, and then you're essentially just importing that into your client-side code and calling it RPC. And at a component level, it's way nicer because you're oftentimes duplicating a lot of code from loader to loader. If you have a component that lives on one page and a component that lives on the other page, they have the exact same data. Now I have duplicate code, or I'm creating an abstraction that I'm importing into both of those layers. It just gives and then what you're doing is that information comes in at a loader level, a route level, and you hot potato that data all the way down into whatever component you need. And now all of a sudden, like in a React context, now that those props exist and are going all the way down the tree, rather than this component has these props, this specific data, and it's tied to that component.
I see.
This is one of my hugest qualms with all of these frameworks. And like for my example, I'm on my website right now. I fetch in the footer of every single page, I fetch Syntax Podcast and I fetch my latest tweets and I put them into the footer of that. And the logic for fetching both of those things should not have to live at a page level.
Correct.
Right? Like I shouldn't have to think, oh, what page am I on? What pieces of data may I need for this? The loader for that data should live in the component for the podcast or the component for the tweet. React Suspense makes that very easy, meaning that like it knows when there is a child that is fetching data, and it knows if and how long it should wait for it. And if not, like, oh, it's taking too long, I can send the rest of it and then stream that in at a later point. I absolutely love putting the logic of how to get the data in the same component of like where it's being rendered, or at least like I don't have to put that in it. And what I have to do in like Tanstack land is I have to write all these like server actions, and then I have to figure out what page I'm on, and then import that into the page loader, and then like Scott says, you have to weave that data in and out, and I don't like that. And React Server Components has that, and now Svelte has that with asynchronous Svelte, which is, I absolutely love it.
Yeah, I can't go back. Yeah.
And this is good inspiration for my framework, because right now what I'm building has page loaders, but basically what we're talking about here is component loaders. Like a component should be able to define what data it needs, and that should also tie into the overall cache and server-side rendering layer. Like even though a component is declaring a dependency on some loader data, that should still be server-side rendered. That doesn't mean it needs to be client-side.
Yes.
So
Correct.
That's what people are like, well, just wait till it loads and then fetch the data. But like, I don't want that. Yeah. And the reason why a lot of these frameworks don't do that is you can very easily make a waterfall website where like something fetches something, and then that loads another component, and then that component now needs to fetch something else, and now you can make very slow websites that way if you don't know how to properly use like React Suspense.
Yeah, and another thing that was really great about the Svelte Kit implementation of this is with their actions, what you're doing, your form actions or whatever that are these RPC functions, because those are all validated by a standard schema, you actually can import those functions and spread them into form inputs, and then your form inputs get validation in the actual JavaScript and HTML.
Big fan. Yeah, big fan of that. What else is there with it? It comes with auth baked in, which is using Better Auth, which I thought was pretty interesting to include it. It seems like a lot of these tools, like Drizzle and Better Auth, and they're not that old, but I feel like everyone is finally like, this is it? Can we stop changing them?
Yeah. Better Auth rips, and it's flexible enough you can do anything with it, which is one of the reasons why I like it. It's easy enough to just drop into anything. I'm a big fan. So again, this is all the stuff I like. Yeah.
And I didn't see, like, Evan didn't show examples of auth during the demo, but I'm hoping that it also, like, by default gives you some pretty zero config stuff, because, like, Better Auth is nice, but you do have to configure things, obviously, but to get, like, just a basic username, password login with no config would also be really nice for just the sites you want to spin up like that.
I was curious about that as well. It's like, does this just give you like auth and like tokens, or does it give you like users, like a database user that you can then associate stuff? And in looking at their like CLI, there's void auth login. No, that's probably for the cloud provider.
That's for the cloud provider. Yes.
Yeah, I think that's just for logging into void. But if you take a look at the example code they have here, they have import auth, which is powered by Better Auth. Yeah. So I'm curious if it like kind of goes one step further and gives you like a Laravel or a Rails would give you, if it gives you those users or not.
I will say, just looking at this one slide, it has it's like dream code, right? Just import the DB and use it, import KV and use it, import storage and use it, import auth and use it. So that's nice. Like we said earlier, this is tied to Cloudflare. So each one of those things has a Cloudflare backed service that's actually managing all of that for you. But
and probably even further, it like does all of the like wrapping of Drizzle for you, which is like, I look at that and I think like, that's not that. I have like a 26 lines of code, db.ts file myself, and I simply just import the DB directly from that, right? And with the Cloudflare Vite plugin, it doesn't need like the context to like pull the string out of it. You know, it can pull it out of thin air from a sync local storage. So a lot of these like things I look at, and having used the Cloudflare Vite plugin with TanStack quite a bit, I think, I don't know, like these are not huge paper cuts that I hit with this type of thing.
Yeah. I think it comes down to kind of hiding the details, which is basically what Vercel does for you, right? Like if you want a Redis database or Postgres database, like they hide the details, you pay a little bit extra. And I think that's what they're trying to get at, but it might be in this case, like the details aren't that bad because it's like a 3-line config file versus just importing DB. So
I
don't know.
Yeah, it always is a delicate balance of like, do I want to figure out what the Wrangler commands are? Part of it is like the Wrangler or the Cloudflare
Wrangler
MCP.
sucks.
Super good. You said it sucks, Scott?
No, Wrangler sucks, but the MCP,
Wrangler.
the Cloudflare MCP is good. Yeah,
You just ask your agent, like, make a database and stick it in my Wrangler.json file, and it will boop, 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 do it for you.
I haven't used some of these Vercel things in a long time, but when they first announced like the Vercel DB and the Vercel KV stuff or the key value stuff they were doing, one thing I'm struck with is that these are all in one spot. They're all in Cloudflare. Where with Vercel, at least when they launched it, and I don't know if this is still the case, the key value was on Upstash. The Postgres was on Neon. So like they weren't like running that all through AWS or one spot like everything else was. And I found that to be a little iffy when I was using that tech before, but it's been a little while since I've tried that out. So this is all in one spot.
Cloudflare is mostly just bindings. Similar to how Cloudflare works is you just add a database and then it will communicate back and forth with you. I don't know if that's an actual performance issue or not. I kind of doubt it since Vercel is so performance, and very likely they're all running on the same server anyway. They're all running in an AWS East 1.
Yeah.
So the big like feedback and the big like talk that everybody had when this was announced is like, is this not just lock-in to Cloudflare? If it is so tightly coupled to Cloudflare, will this work on self-hosted? Can I use Bun? Can I put it on a Raspberry Pi? That type of thing. And Evan came out and says, I want to be very upfront about Void being tightly coupled to Cloudflare. The lock-in is what makes the DX possible. If you don't want to lock in, then it's not for you, and that's fine. Vite will forever be platform agnostic. Use it with Nitro, version 3, or Adonis. The choice is yours, and Void just gives you another option. So I quote tweeted this and unapologetically Cloudflare, meaning that if you want to have Next.js Vercel level of DX, you do need integration between your infrastructure and the actual code that you're writing. And as much as people absolutely hate that because they want to be able to move around to all of the different platforms, it's interesting that he comes out and just says, like, look, you can do it yourself. And like I've done pretty much this whole stack myself several times on Cloudflare, and it's not that bad. But if you want one step further, you're willing to pay for that. It will be.
Yeah. I wonder a little bit about like when you are picking this stack, are you picking all of the stuff in the stack? And how does that? I don't
think so. Like it's just code. Whatever code you want to run, you want to use a different database. As long as it can run on Cloudflare, you can bring whatever you want.
That's the main thing. Like, can it run in Cloudflare workers? And if it can, use whatever you want. But the thing is, a lot of things can't, which is why they introduce things like D1 and some of these other offerings, because it specifically works inside of workers.
Mm-hmm. I thought what would be kind of a neat exercise for the team here is like, let's go through each of these choices and ask ourselves, is this lock-in? You know? So like, if you're building on top of this thing, your database, SQLite or Postgres and Drizzle. To me, that's not lock-in, right? And people say that a lot, like, oh, why are you using this like specific Cloudflare database? I'm like, well, I'm just using. I try to keep things as standards as possible, and if I use Drizzle, I know that I could, in not every case, but like I could move it to SQLite somewhere else, and in many cases, I could move it to MySQL somewhere else, you know, or Postgres.
Yeah, it'd be a little bit of a migration, because what I think about is like, if you're using D1, you're using like that specific D1 binding. But if you are running a deployed app that talks to a SQLite database, you're probably using libsql or Terso. So yeah, I don't know.
It's a different adapter.
Yeah, you can swap out the adapter. I don't know if that's going to change your table definitions, but that would be the one step.
I'll tell you, because in local dev, if you want to use Drizzle Studio in local dev with Cloudflare, you have two options. You use the HTTP API, or you write some weird thing that finds the SQLite database on your local machine and then uses the Better SQL adapter for that. And I do that for all of my sites, meaning that I'm running different adapters in prod versus local, and I've had zero issues.
I don't like doing that though. It's
I agree.
Not because there's the issues, but it's just annoying. Yeah.
Yeah. But I agree.
It is.
Single config, swap out. It's not necessarily lock-in.
Auth. Is this lock-in? It's kind of one of the scarier things to get locked in on.
But I will say, it doesn't seem like it's locking into you into an auth platform. It's locking you into an auth library, right?
Yes.
So like, as far as this goes, you still get all the benefits of Better Auth. Like, you're hosting the users. Like, there's no like user limit or anything like that.
Yeah, you're hosting it. You're not paying for auth specifically. And then again, if you wanted to migrate off of this, it's as simple as just exporting those tables, and then bingo bango, you're not having to rewrite your auth. Man, let me tell you, there's nothing worse than having to change your auth platform or change the algorithm or something. Because when I had level up tutorials, it was on Meteor, and I wanted to move off of Meteor. I ended up having to write my own Meteor compatible auth package to avoid having to make all the users re-update their passwords and stuff like that. Yeah.
Key value. I use the Cloudflare key value quite a bit, and the API is very simple. It's get, put, delete, or whatever it is, and then there's a TTL that you can put on it. Very similar to like a Redis API. So kind of lock in, but also if you wanted to move away from that, I don't think that would be a big lift.
And I don't know if they showed it in their slides, but if they're using the unstorage driver, which comes from Unjs, it has adapters for
other things.
Cloudflare, DinoKV.
How did I not know this?
So I don't know if they showed it in their slides or not, but if they are, then actually it's not lock-in, because unstorage uses the same API. It exposes all of the things that you talked about, but with the same methods calls, and then all you have to do is swap out the adapter to choose, okay, I want to talk to Redis, or I want to talk to Cloudflare KV. So
we're a sponsor. How did I not know about
what did I know about this? But just click on getting started, and then click on drivers, and you'll see they support everything. Or drivers at the top. If you click on that, absolutely every KV store, and you just swap out the adapter.
I use Dino KV, Cloudflare KV. Oh man, this whole Unjs ecosystem is the best, right? There's like unpicture, whatever. If you're worried about lock-in, some person that writes Nuxt for a living has written an Unjs version of whatever that is, and it will come to save you.
Yeah, because a lot of these plug into Nitro as well. But I don't know. I will say, like, if they're not using unstorage, then it's a little bit of lock-in. You're going to have a little bit of migration pain. But maybe.
But here's the thing: just make your own. Like, the thing about this is that you can get the Cloudflare binding direcally, and then if you don't want to be locked in, then just
build your own adapter layer.
Write a 6 lines of code where you can import and export this thing yourself.
True.
True.
AI. Let's loop this in with like I guess like there's Cloudflare cron, there's Cloudflare queues, and there's Cloudflare AI. I would say that these things are fairly high on the lock-in aspect, because if you're building on top of durable objects, there are some open source implementation of durable objects now with the same API, which is great. But I would say those are pretty high in on the lock-in. But a lot of people are willing to take that trade-off for like the DX or the cost for this type of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will say it is lock-in, but one thing I do like, I like that this is baked in. That's something I do like about Vercel, like being able to have crons baked in. But like queues are something that I explicitly never take advantage of because I just don't ever set it up. It's like, which is the dumbest thing to say. I've built queues, I've worked with queues before, but like it's one of those things that like if it was there and I didn't have to do any work for it, I would use a hell of a ton more.
I totally agree. I have a project. I'm working on my like uses.tech website and I'm moving it over to Cloudflare. And there's one thing that is like a fairly large ingestion process, and it needs to wait and all of this stuff. And it's a perfect use case for queues. And normally I would just stick that thing in like a long running endpoint, which I did with our transcripts as well on the syntax site. But since the queues were so easy, they were just there. I was like, oh, might as well, I don't have to set up a whole thing for it.
So this is one thing that is more Rails or Laravel like, because they come with systems for this. So this will be interesting because like you're saying, like if it's there and devs know that they can use it and they don't have to set anything up, we can build more complex systems that use queues in the right way instead of having like a long running endpoint. I do agree, lock in, because you're tying it to the specific Cloudflare way of doing it.
Well, like we should say as well, like people don't mind that right now because it is so cheap. But as much as we love Cloudflare here, they are a public company that is beholden to their shareholders, and the $5 could become 50 at some point.
Yeah.
So hopefully not. I don't think it will, but that's why I also am asking these questions as well. React, Hono, page routing, all of this stuff, like page routing itself, page handlers, defining the stuff, it's somewhat of a special API, but the whole request, response, fetch, React, Hono, this stuff is just standards, web-based, I could take a handler from my React Hono application and move it into a SvelteKit handler and do very little work, and it would transfer over very well.
Yeah. I will say huge points for building this whole thing on Hono, because Hono is great. And
yes.
I like it.
I'm big fan as well. One thing we didn't is a question, and I asked this in their chat room. I said, like, will you be able to self-Cloudflare your own Void apps? Meaning that, like, will you, if you're deploying a Void app, can you deploy that only to Void, or can you just take this adapter and deploy it to your own Cloudflare, given that you're going to have to do all the Wrangler commands and whatnot yourself? And they said they don't know yet, which is kind of interesting, quite honestly. Like, maybe you can't deploy this to your own Cloudflare account, but you have to use the Void Cloud one. I think if that's the case, I'd probably be a big no from me on these types of things, because I would want to use my own account. BYOC, bring your own Cloudflare.
But I
agree with you. Yeah, I don't want to put my stuff in another place and have to worry about DNS. Like, I got all my stuff at Cloudflare already. I would love to just keep all my stuff there as well.
But I will say this is what Vercel brought to AWS, right? It hit all the details. You can deploy with one command. You don't have to do anything. And I don't think Vercel supports like setting an AWS key or anything like that. Like they upcharge you, and that's how it goes.
Yeah.
So I think
you're right.
with Void, it's probably going to be their business model, which at the end of the day, I think like right now, we all know the Cloudflare stack and it's easy enough for us to set it up. But at a point, if we start using this, then we don't have to worry about that. But it does come down to like, what's the premium, right? How much more is it going to be to use Void versus like doing the stuff directly on Cloudflare? Because personally, Cloudflare isn't that complex that it might be worth that much more of a premium.
So. Right. And Cloudflare's trying to build their own version of like Vercel for Cloudflare, like they're trying to make it as good as it's not there yet. But they're trying.
Yeah,
but
UI gets
I
better
think
every
another
day.
thing to think about is like not us developers who know the Wrangler commands, but like there's this whole new swath of like vibe coders who are building things, and like, man, that's a tidy ass little package that you can just boop 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 type
What is
deploy,
that, Wes?
and it pushes it. Yeah, I probably should have said that, but you know what I mean. Like,
You know what you
this
mean.
is a great, totally batteries included, and then like the agents love Next.js and Vercel right now because it is a tidy ass little package. So I think so.
Yeah.
I have a question. Do you guys think this would be possible to use in something like an Electron situation? Given that you're not actually even hosting it somewhere, but let's say you wanted to take advantage of the non-Cloudflare things. I don't know why
That's
you
a
would
good
do
question.
that, but I
So,
just like wondering.
Cloudflare
is it-
has like Worker D is the JavaScript runtime. Like, it's not Node.js. They have their own JavaScript runtime. And when it runs locally via something called Miniflare, it will try to replicate most of those things, right? It replicates the databases, it replicates its key value, quite a bit of it. There's some things like browser rendering it doesn't. What are some of the other ones that they have? The image resizing API, that doesn't work locally, which is kind of a pain in the butt. But like, yeah, would this be a thing that you could just stick the local version of that in like an Electron app and just get the whole Wrangler experience?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it makes sense. Like, I think what you're talking about, Scott, is like you want to use SvelteKit routing in an Electron app, right? So like, could we use this voids page-based routing in an Electron app?
Yeah.
That kind of thing. Yeah.
Because what I don't want to get into a situation like if I'm going to buy into this stack, which you know, I've bought into SvelteKit so hard that I know it inside and out, and I can use it to build Electron apps, or I can use it to build Tori apps, or whatever. But like, if I'm buying into the stack, am I now forfeiting being able to use it in other contexts like that?
Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah.
And my gut feeling is yes, because it's so
totally,
tied to Cloudflare, and it's like their build output is a Cloudflare worker, right? It's not something that runs on Node.js. So probably, but I don't know. We'll see. I mean, I think
Just
there are a
run
lot
it
of
in dev.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Is like you just run the Vite server next to your Electron app. Yeah,
I've done it. Like when I did my receipt printer thing, I ran the Next.js dev command, and I had close to 2,000 people visiting it at once, and the dev server handled it fine.
yeah.
I was like, why are we not just running dev in production? That's half a joke, but also it's kind of
It's great. It's good. It's really good.
Yeah. So I'm wondering with this how many things we've yet to learn about this. Like, what does this actually look like? I can't wait to get my hands on it. I can't wait to use it. For me, everything clicks just a little bit different when I get into the actual code. So I wonder how my understanding or thoughts on this will change after we know more.
As well. I also don't think a lot of this is built yet. So I have a feeling that they're just listening to what everybody is saying and getting feedback for it. And then they are kind of going to be building around those thoughts. So in the comments down below, let them know your thoughts if you would use this or not, because I'm sure they're going to be reading it.
Yeah. Feedback is priceless. Your feedback is a gift.
Vite back.
Feedback, yes.